Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast. The show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am joined once again by the wonderful Ellen Weatherford, host of the incredible podcast, Just the Zoo of Us. Last week, she joined me to discuss the bizarre but brilliant wildlife of her home state of Florida, and today she's back to chat more about some of the conservation issues facing the area. This includes discussions about the destruction of natural habitats for human development, the division of nature by highways, and the huge issue of invasive species. Did you know that Florida actually has one of the worst invasive species problems in the US? Well, it does. So today we're going to be talking about Burmese pythons, iguanas, and plants. That's right, plants, you are not off the hook on this one. After all of that, we then talk about zoos in Florida, and how, in a hugely popular tourist destination, you can tell apart the good from the ethically questionable. Without taking sides, there are some things we discuss. Now, that all seems awfully serious, but do not worry. We make sure and stop for a good few laughs along the way. Anyone who knows me or Ellen knows we can't stay serious for too long, and so we have a good few laughs. Do not worry, everyone. Now, with all of that said, let's get started. Having said all that, we now have to move on because it's Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast. We have to talk about, can't just focus on it's in the name. We've got to talk about conservation. And so I wanted to ask, from your perspective, someone who's there, what are the kind of conservation issues that are surrounding Florida? What are the major ones in your head that are the animals and the wildlife are kind of facing in Florida right now?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I'm in North Florida, so I'm not as
Mhm.
familiar with the environmental impacts hitting South Florida, which can be pretty major, especially since South Florida has, the Everglades and
Mhm.
all sorts of coastal ecosystems that are experiencing issues related to marine, issues, which I'm not
Mhm.
as familiar with. But the human development is by far the biggest sort of environmental
Mhm.
issue in Florida, particularly the loss of habitat, right? So, human development, whether it is converting natural spaces into residential spaces or development of the coasts for tourist
Mhm.
areas or even just developing agricultural land. So this is a big problem, especially in central Florida, where we have
Mhm.
these prairies and grasslands and stuff. Since Florida is so flat, there's so much room there where it's very easy to convert that land into agricultural land because that's just wide flat space for
Mhm.
fields to plant crops in. And so this turns those areas into these giant monocultures, right, where you have fields and fields and fields of just one species, which is obviously not super great for biodiversity in that
Mhm.
area. And especially some of those endemic species that I talked about, like the scrub jay and the grasshopper sparrow is another one. We have a Florida grasshopper sparrow that's endemic to here, and they need those prairie ecosystems. So as prairies are being converted to agricultural fields, those animals are losing a lot of the space that they need, and they didn't have
Mhm.
that much space to begin with. So it's looking kind of bleak for some of those creatures. But also, something that I think people don't think about is the fact that highways and
Mhm.
roads, so especially in the United States, our highways are huge, and these highways cut habitats in half, basically. So we've got this one major highway called I-4 that goes basically from Orlando to Tampa. So it goes
Mhm.
just bisects the state basically from one coast to the other. But it's a huge highway that is extremely dangerous to cross. So this basically cuts for like large animals that need huge territories. So black
Mhm.
bears, which we have here, Florida panthers, which are a subspecies of the like mountain lion that lives in North America.
Mhm.
They need these huge home ranges because they're territorial large animals and they don't like to share space with each other. But this fragments their habitat. So first of all, they don't have access to all of the space that they need to like roam, but also
Mhm.
they can't access each other to reproduce. So like when their habitat is fragmented, their selection of possible mates is incredibly narrow. So then you get a
Mhm.
lot of inbreeding, you get really poor genetic stability and bad biodiversity too. So like you end
Mhm.
up this like genetic bottlenecking where then you start to get like health problems and the animals don't live as long, or they just are like, it really disrupts reproduction for large animals like that. So like
Mhm.
habitat fragmentation is really bad for them. There is
Mhm.
a really cool program. Let me see if I can pull up. I can't believe I didn't write this down, but there is a really cool program that I believe the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission has been taking on that is constructing natural corridors where
Mhm.
they're building either natural passages underneath or over these highways that form corridors for wildlife to pass through. And you can find the most beautiful videos that the state will set up where they'll put up these cameras and like take
Mhm.
videos of all the creatures that use these corridors. And they'll have like bears and panthers and like all sorts of gorgeous creatures that are going across, like deer and just like beautiful animal. And it's so nice to know that like they're able to start taking advantage of those like corridors, and it
Mhm.
has had like legitimate very like good impact. You're starting to see some of these species decline be like mitigated a little bit by these corridors. So let me see if I can find it. A Florida natural corridor.
It's amazing because it's like it's one of those things that like I feel like people would initially be like, but they don't know what a bridge is. They don't know what a tunnel is. How will they like? How will they know? But then you look at the photos and you see just the vast array of animals that will go through these things, and it's a
Oh
thing
my
that's been
gosh, it's
proven. Like
gorgeous.
we've talked about on the show, like we've had chats with people who work in Brazil on tapirs and armadillos and anteaters and stuff, and it works. Like it's a transferable this idea of like every animal just seems like it's like the aversion to cars, the aversion to roads, they know that's a dangerous place. So they know
Hmm.
any way to get over or under, they will go for it. They like it's like I don't know how much credit to give them, whether they just see moving things going quick. But if imagine if you were in that situation, stood on the side of a
Right,
highway going cross, if there was a bridge, you'd know to take it. And it's like a similar thing where their instinct would be like, oh well, I shouldn't try and cross here. Let's use the bridge. And it brings
right.
it down. I remember talking
It
like
does.
they like in the tapir episode that I talked with Patty about, like it really like I can't remember the exact numbers, so listeners go back and listen to that one again. But like it really brings down like it's insane, it's insane.
I
Like,
found
did
it.
you
It is
manage to find?
the
Yeah,
is the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation.
okay,
Um, so it looks like a grant funded program.
uh-huh.
To I don't think it's done by the state. But what they are doing is building these natural passageways for animals from like one part of their habitat into the other. So that
Mm-hmm.
is a really cool way that Florida is trying to like tackle this problem of habitat fragmentation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the other like huge problems that Florida faces, which goes back to what I mentioned earlier about Florida's climate being
Mm-hmm.
very warm and humid. It's a sort of climate that a lot of species can thrive in, even species that are not from here. So
Yep.
Florida has a huge invasive species problem. It is, I believe, the second most impacted state in the United States by invasive species, with the first being Hawaii. So Hawaii has
Mm-hmm.
it far worse. Obviously, they're like a small island. Their ecosystems are much more small and contained. So, like, any change there is going to be very disruptive. But Florida is the second behind them in terms of invasive species. And the most notorious invasive species that we have here is the Burmese python, which I think is the one that, like, everybody kind of knows about here.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the Burmese pythons, what happened was first of all they are only like really thriving and reproducing in the swamps
Mm-hmm.
in South Florida. So
Okay.
we don't have them up where I live. We don't have feral Burmese pythons. So what happened was people in Florida like to have weird pets. Like exotic pet ownership is a big thing in Florida. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people wanted to have Burmese pythons. So a lot of people brought Burmese pythons into Florida as pets. Over time, a lot of them, like people realized they couldn't take care of these snakes because they get massive, right? You're talking like over 10 feet long, like in
Mhm.
adulthood. So these snakes get huge. People realize they couldn't take care of them. They just set them loose outside. And so you start getting pythons here and there. And that wasn't
Mhm.
really like the worst, but you started to see them because people were just releasing pets. But
Mhm.
the real problem started, like the boom in Burmese python population happened in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit Miami and destroyed breeding facilities that were breeding like at a commercial scale Burmese
Oh
pythons.
no.
So when the buildings got destroyed, it set all of the Burmese pythons loose. So then you've got tons of Burmese pythons just loose in Florida. And unfortunately, for us, fortunately for the snake, however, Florida's climate very closely mimics the climate they're used to in their native
Mhm.
range. So they're thriving. But also, here in Florida, we don't have predators that can really do anything about them once they reach like adulthood, because
Mhm.
our largest predators are, other than like alligators, right? Like an adult alligator might be able to take on an adult Burmese python, but all we really got is like black bears and
Mhm.
like Florida panthers, which are really, really rare and they're not that big anyway. So like once a Burmese python reaches adulthood, there's nothing that can be done about it without like a human intervention, basically. They're just sitting pretty once they reach adulthood. They're just there.
That's
There's
crazy.
there's like a window of time when they're small enough where like a natural
Mhm.
predator would be able to eat them or something. But once they reach adulthood, they're just they're chill there, and then they can continue to reproduce and stuff like that. So they are everywhere. Well, I wouldn't say that they're everywhere, because now that there's like there are actually like state programs where there are state incentives to kill
Mhm.
Burmese pythons in South Florida now. So people go out and hunt them all the time, but cannot hunt them as quickly as they are reproducing, because they're also, it's a swamp. Like it's really difficult to go out there and find
Mhm.
them, right? Like they're meant to not be easy to find. So they're outcompeting native predators like other snakes. Like I mentioned, we have this eastern indigo snake that's really, really cool, but
Mhm.
the Burmese python is outcompeting them. So they're eating up all the food that would otherwise be eaten by the indigo snakes. So you're starting to see like our ecosystems are getting really out of whack because the
Mhm.
pythons are outcompeting everything else. I mentioned that we don't have them up here where I live. I live in northern Florida where it does freeze in the winters. But a problem with that is global warming, in the sense that
They're coming for you.
as the temperatures rise, if we do
Mhm.
get to a point where it no longer freezes in the wintertime, the snakes will be able to move farther north. This is something we're seeing with like the Joro spider in Georgia, where like they're immune to freezes, so they can move farther north.
Uh-huh.
And so if the climate continues to shift warmer, then the snakes will be able to expand their range outside of where they already are. So right now they're like crammed into the bottom of the
Mhm.
peninsula, and they can't spread into the rest of the country because they can't cross that like threshold where it's too cold. But if it gets warm
Mhm.
enough, they'll be able to. So Burmese pythons are kind of a big they're like the big high
Mhm.
profile, everybody kind of knows about them invasive species. But there's tons of other invasive species in Florida. There's so many. One of them is iguanas. Some people think iguanas are native here. They're not. They were introduced. They're not like as damaging, I guess, as the Burmese pythons, but still like they compete with like native species. But they're
Mhm.
also like we said earlier, they burrow and dig into the ground and stuff like that. And sometimes
Mhm.
their burrowing and digging can actually cause like infrastructure damage, so they can be very disruptive to human development. Wouldn't We can't talk about invasive species without talking about feral cats. Feral cats
Mhm.
are, I mean, they're everywhere. They're literally everywhere. Everywhere is feral cats here in Florida. Like they're just part of like the world here now. There's cat colonies. I will say that our area is pretty well controlled by predators. We have
Mhm.
coyotes and bobcats and hawks and all sorts of stuff that can eat cats around here. But in areas where they don't have them, feral cats are just everywhere, and so feral cats naturally like
Mhm.
kill our native species. But like a lot of people don't think about the fact that not only do they actively kill other animals, but they can spread diseases. So like their droppings can spread
Mhm.
toxoplasmosis, which our native animals aren't immune to. And so like they're like spreading, they're still killing things even if they're not actively killing things.
Mhm.
Off of the coast, even in the water, we have invasive species. The most
Mhm.
famous of which is the lionfish. So
Yes.
in the Atlantic, and I think in the Caribbean and the Gulf too, the lionfish is like a voracious predator. Like it eats anything. If it can fit it in its
Hmm.
mouth, it's going to eat it. And they just eat and eat and eat. Like it's to the point that like I saw a study that was examining obesity in lionfish because they're starting to become so overfed because they just eat
Hmm.
everything and we don't have any native predators of them here. They look so weird that the predators we have here don't understand what they are and don't eat them.
Hmm.
Like nothing eats them here. And so they just thrive and will just wipe out coral reefs. So they'll come through and just like demolish a section of the coast. So lionfish are a huge problem. Once again, there is a state program incentivizing people to kill them and eat them. I don't think it's really put a huge dent in their population because they're still out there reproducing and stuff. But I
Hmm.
mean, it's out there. And then the last thing I wanted to say for invasive species is that it's not just animals. We have
Yeah.
invasive plants. So many invasive plants. I saw that we have about 79 species of invasive plants.
Hmm.
I asked Emily, my friend Emily, who works with invasive plants, and Emily said that their public enemy number one plant is the Brazilian pepper tree, which there's
It
something
sounds
interesting,
charming. It sounds charming.
doesn't
So I
it?
need to know why it is. Why it's number one. Why is
Well,
it?
it being charming is why people brought them here in the first place.
Hmm.
And then they just kind of went nuts, right? So Emily told me something really interesting about the Brazilian pepper trees. Basically, there were these two different populations of Brazilian pepper trees that had been like reproducing on the east coast of Florida and on the west coast of Florida.
Hmm.
So they were slightly different enough to be like genetically distinct from each other, though still both being like the same species. But they were just ever so slightly genetically distinct enough where they started spreading. They like from the East Coast and the West Coast, they were spread and spread and spread till they met in the middle. And they met in Central Florida and hybridized, which she described this
Mm.
as hybrid vigor, which I suppose is a phenomenon where when you get a hybridized species, they become much more like resilient and like genetically stable.
Hmm.
And so then they just get stronger. Like they just get like harder to take care, like harder to eliminate, I guess, in that area. And like the problem just amplifies itself because now they've met and hybridized. So now like the
Uh-huh.
problem's just amplifying and now they're just all over the place. So, we get these invasive plants just everywhere. There are very, very, very few, if any, spaces left that are not like colonized by invasive plants. So you mentioned earlier, like if somebody does decide to like travel to Florida on vacation or something, you want to like take a boat out and
Uh-huh.
go out on the boats and stuff. One thing that somebody has, I think it was Mallory McNulty told me about when we were talking about freshwater sponges, is that if you're taking your boat from one aquatic system to another, like maybe you're going
Hmm.
from one river to a different river, wash your boat first. Like take your boat out and then like clean it, like bleach the underside of it and stuff, like kill off any like organisms or like anything that could be stuck to the bottom that you might be transporting from one system to another, because like that's how invasive species spread and like that's how diseases spread. And like
Hmm.
that's one thing you can do to like boat responsibly, I suppose, is to like clean your boat before you go from one system to another.
Mm. And it makes sense because it's like you wouldn't wear muddy boots. Like if you'd been out for
Right.
a walk, you wouldn't wear muddy boots into your house because then you
Right.
would make you and yourself and your pets and everything that lives within that space sick or dirty or whatever it is. So it makes sense that similarly, if you're going out and you're transporting boating, it makes
Yeah.
sense clean
Don't track your
halfway.
mud through all
No,
the other rivers.
exactly. Especially when there are very cute residents in the form of manatees in said rivers. We want to keep them nice and safe.
Yeah.
No, that's so interesting. Like horrifying in many ways, and problems that like those problems in conservation where you're like, I'm glad that's not my problem to fix because it
Oh,
sounds incredibly
overwhelming.
complicated. And like
Yes.
just when you were talking about the south of Florida with the pythons, like my mind was also swirling around the fact that like I in preparing for this today I was reading articles about like how climate change is not just going to drive those pythons north, they will also, like the south tip of Florida will be badly affected by flooding
Mhm.
and that type of kind of impact as well. So really,
Yeah.
South Florida is not the place to be in terms of these kind of issues because it seems to all be, it's not a good time down there. Not a good time.
Yeah. Also, a lot of coastal development involves like
Hmm.
converting mangrove forests and mangrove swamps into
Mhm.
like, real estate basically, which means like raising completely like destroying the mangroves and stuff. But I think what
Mhm.
they're not thinking about when they do that often, not that they haven't been told, it's just that they do it anyway, is
Yep.
that those mangroves are a big like storm barrier. So when a storm comes in, a big problem is like, big giant crashing storm waves, you got a storm surge, the flood waters rise. But if you have a significant mangrove barrier,
Mhm.
then that forest absorbs those waves. It breaks up the waves, it absorbs the flood water and stuff like that. So the thicker your mangrove forest is, the better protected you're going to be from massive storms. So the
Mhm.
more they like develop the mangrove swamps, the worse the impacts of the storm are going to be. So that is another like big issue where like human development is not just impacting the wildlife, but then now it's putting human lives at risk, right? Where like also
Mhm.
the people that live there are being put in harm's way as the storms are only hurting them more because they've eliminated that like natural barrier.
Yes, that's I because I just I like it's one of those ones where I'm like, we are the worst. Like I'm like, how have we not realized that we're not just like ruining ecosystems, we're also setting ourselves up for these issues? It's
Right.
like you're just like, oh no, oh come on guys, let's think about this one. And it's something that like we see like because I talked to someone from the Australian Koala Foundation, Deborah Tabar, about how in Australia they'll cut down a bunch of forests, plant some houses on it, and call it koala like beach. And you're like,
Mm,
but that's just creating similar problems where you've destroyed this habitat that is essential for biodiversity and then
right.
planted houses on top of it. And it's like everyone around the world seems to be having these same issues.
Yeah.
Um, Although Florida seems to have them all adding up at once, which seems a dangerous
It is
and scary thing.
is a perfect storm of ecological issues. There is kind
Yeah.
of like, I don't know if this, I honestly do not know the history behind this. Is just something I've heard like described, so I totally don't know if this is even true. But one of the things
Mhm.
that I heard is that when like the Spanish and the
Mhm.
English and like European colonizers were coming into Florida and having conflict with the people that were already here,
Mhm.
like the indigenous, like the Seminole and the Calusa people, that they were able to find refuge in the swamp because they understood the swamp and they knew their way around and how to
Mhm.
navigate the swamp. So they would go in there, and the Europeans had no idea what they were like. They're like, I do not know what this, I do
Mhm.
not know how to get around in this space. So like that was kind of the holdout. That was like the stronghold. And that like some of those people were able to like survive to today because they found shelter in the swamp. So like having that like understanding and respectful relationship with the swamp like help them survive, and
Mhm.
now like you see the opposite of that happening now where they're not understanding and
Mhm.
respecting the swamp and they're harming it and then being harmed for it. So like rather than having that swamp there to protect them, the
Mhm.
swamp's gone, so now you're going to get totally wrecked by this hurricane, right? So it's an interesting parallel between like
Mhm.
they clearly had it figured out and we're doing it correctly, like hey, if we have a
Mhm.
respectful relationship with our swamp, it will protect us. And then now we're seeing that not happen so much.
And all I can think about now is the fact that still, Europeans who perhaps come on holiday rather than to colonize now, as you mentioned earlier, are still swimming in bodies of water that they don't understand
I
because they
know.
think, well, this will be fun. And there's gators and all sorts of, I'm sure, smaller, nastier, bitier, skin infesting and all sorts of
Oh,
things
we've
going
got
on.
flesh-eating bacteria, it's the
Oh,
worst.
oh.
Yeah.
The casual nature you said that by, I'm like, she's clearly been there a long time. It's the
It's
worst.
it's one
It's
of
just
those
a
things
thing.
where like they tell kids like don't go in the river if you have an open wound. Like if you have a cut, you can't like swim in the because you get bacteria, flesh-eating bacteria in it.
That
It's
is
surprisingly common.
horrifying. That's, oh, just like, oh, sorry, I can't come tonight. Why? Oh, just, for
I
the
have a
flesh eating
cut, so
bacteria. I'll be
yeah.
fine. It's
I
fine.
mean, it doesn't stop people do it anyway. It's just they tell you
Yeah.
not to.
Oh, and I mean, that kind of one other kind of thing, I think that topic that I'd like to speak about to do with Florida is I feel like Florida got a lot of press during the pandemic because of a certain zoo and a certain lady who
Mhm.
lives and resides in Florida, the one and only Carol Baskin. And in
Mhm.
previous conversations we've had, we've kind of talked about the fact that like Florida, when you go to zoos in Florida, you have to do like a little bit of research before you go, just to make sure you're perfectly comfortable
Mhm.
going and like visiting these places. So I wondered, like, for you, what was the kind of, I know that there is like the American Association of zoos and all that sort of stuff going on. But I wondered what it was like for you there. Like, what is the zoo experience and like visiting that type of supposed conservation attraction like in
Yeah.
Florida?
Yeah, so I will start by saying that first of all, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not incredibly familiar with how the laws work. Also, a lot of laws are in the process of being changed right now because
Hmm.
of what you mentioned, some very high profile cases of animal welfare issues
Hmm.
that came up in Florida. So that's actually like some of that stuff is still kind of up in the air. But my understanding is that the so if you're not super familiar with how things kind of go in the United States, is we have both federal
Hmm.
laws that apply to the entire country and then state laws, where your state has its own set of laws that only apply to your state, but then there's
Hmm.
federal laws that apply to everybody. And Florida's laws governing exotic animal ownership and exhibitorship are
Hmm.
notoriously vague. So they're difficult to enforce. So they
Hmm.
don't give very specific thing. Like they won't give things like dimensions on the size of the enclosure. They'll just say something like, oh, it has to be adequate. Or, oh, like your animal has to be able to like change position comfortably or something like that. So like
Hmm.
the criteria is like very, very vague, but it's also largely unenforced. So
Hmm.
in order to exhibit animals in Florida, and I believe in the United States in general, because this is not exclusive to Florida, but you obviously have to have a license, and the licenses are
Hmm.
issued by the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, I believe, and the
Hmm.
USDA's criteria for issuing these licenses are laughably easy to obtain. Like it
Hmm.
is like a $40 application. You have to fill out like a one-page questionnaire, and then they send like somebody to come check out your property and make sure you have enough. Like it's basically acreage. Like they make sure
Hmm.
that you have enough acres of property to be able to like house this, like it's like class 1 wildlife that you're trying to have. So if it's like big cats or
Hmm.
elephants or rhinos or something like that, they'll make sure that you physically have the space to do that.
Hmm.
And then but the problem with it is that, once you have this license, if you get your license, they can cite you for violations till the cows come home and nothing will be really done about it, or if it is, it'll be like a very
Hmm.
low fine where the fines for violating the USDA criteria for your like animal exhibitorship license, that just becomes a cost of business. Like paying for your USDA violations just becomes like you just eat that as your like administrative costs. So you'll get
Hmm.
these like facilities that are being cited for USDA like the Animal Welfare Act, like violations of animal welfare law, and they're being cited for the same violation year after year after year after year, and like nothing gets done about it because they just pay their fine and that's
Hmm.
the end of it, and they just keep doing what they're doing. So basically, like in general, when you're visiting any, not just a zoo, but any type of like place where you're going to see animals in Florida
Hmm.
or even really in the United States, if they're bragging that they're USDA licensed, that means nothing. Like USDA licenses are like nothing. So
Hmm.
what you really need to look for is like third party accreditation. So you need to look
Okay.
for accreditation by organizations that are not government bodies. They're
Hmm.
private, but they are basically these like large networks of professionals that will say, okay, yes, we've checked out this facility, we approve of them. So I know that you guys have, is it WAZA that you guys have?
So we have in the UK, we fall in a very special place where we have three. We have
Oh.
BIAZA, which is the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums. We have WAZA,
Mhm.
which is the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and we have EAZA, which is the European Association of
Okay.
Zoos. So we are triple covered in some places.
We really only have one
Hmm.
that's like the good one,
Okay.
basically. And that is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. It's just AZA.
Hmm. Okay.
So the AZA has just like astronomically high standards. Like they have standards for everything. It is a massive process to get AZA accredited, but they have
Hmm.
standards for, the care of the animal, their enclosure, your veterinary staff. Like you have to have a pretty robust and like approved veterinary staff, educational
Hmm.
programs. They also require that you participate in like species survival plans and conservation programs and stuff. So like you have to really mind your
Hmm.
P's and Q's zoos to get an AZA accreditation. It is very stringent, and there are not that many facilities that are actually AZA accredited, considering how many zoos there are. Not that many of them are AZA accredited. There's another type of accreditation by a different organization that's called the Zoological Association of America. So it's called ZAA instead of AZA because that wasn't confusing enough. Um, but their standards are a lot lower. The
Okay.
application process is much easier. And my biggest beef with ZAA accreditation is that they don't have any criteria around regulating contact between the public and any of their animals. So the ZAA accredited facilities may even allow contact between their guests and carnivores like big cats, and it's up to 25 pounds. So cub petting, basically, like the infamous, highly unethical practice of cub petting, is allowed by the ZAA. So that's not obviously to say that all ZAA places do offer cub petting, or like free contact with elephants is another thing that like the ZAA has like split with AZA over. Like in the ZAA accreditation says like it's up to the zoo whether they want to allow their guests to like have free contact with elephants or not. So they're much more, much more lax about it. So obviously, like ZAA accreditation doesn't mean that it's a bad facility. It's just that they allow a lot more super questionable and super unethical practices. So if I'm looking into a facility to visit and I see that they have ZAA but not AZA, I probably won't go there. Just because you're like, I don't know. So there's also another major accrediting body called the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries that specifically is over like nonprofits like animal sanctuaries, animal rescues, stuff like that. They have high standards as well, but what's separate about them is that they evaluate fundraising and animal acquisition practices, which is like a huge question when you get into like wildlife sanctuaries or wildlife rescues. Things get really murky about like, where's this money coming from and where are these animals coming from? You run into this problem a lot where like places will market themselves as a rescue or a sanctuary, but then you'll find that they're actually buying and selling and trading animals. And you're like, okay, well, you clearly weren't just taking in an animal that needed a home. You were like purchasing and selling. And so the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries is supposed to also, look into that when they're determining whether to accredit a facility or not. So obviously, like not having accreditation doesn't mean that a facility is bad. It doesn't mean that they're abusive, or it doesn't mean that they're neglectful if they don't have accreditation. But there are so many bad actors, right? Like there are just so many horrible, horrible places that treat their animals highly unethically. So I just think the best thing to do is just really do thorough research. Like if you're going to visit anywhere that is like advertising themselves as a zoo or a wildlife facility or anything like that, first of all, like find pictures online of what their enclosures look like. Like you can usually just do this on Google Maps, or you can just, look on TripAdvisor or Yelp or something like that and look to see pictures of the actual places where they keep their animals. And you can usually get a pretty good vibe there. Are they sitting in like, a concrete, concrete cage, or are they in an area with natural spaces and stuff, and like access to clean water and stuff? Another thing I do is I search Instagram. I pull up Instagram and I look to see photos that other people have posted of that facility, and that will usually tell you if they do cub petting or not, right? Because like if people do cub petting or something, they're obviously going to take pictures and post it on their Instagram. So you can look that up. And I'm not going to go into why cub petting is bad, but cub petting is bad. So if you see any facility offering cub petting, that's bad. Red flag, don't go there. But you can search. Another thing that you can do is go on Google and search the name of the facility and then the word violations. So that will tell you whether they've been cited for animal welfare violations. You can also look up to see if they've been in the news for sketchy stuff, right? You can look up to see like if they've usually, with how fierce journalism, but also like critics can be, they're all over it. If anything goes even a little bit awry in a wildlife facility, right, that's going to be reported immediately. And so you can kind of like look around, see if people have had anything to say. Is this a sketchy place? So just, like Google around, use the internet to your advantage. Make sure that your money is going to support people that are doing the right thing with it. I kind of have like a few specific places that I'm like okay with going with because I know them well enough to know like what they're all about and stuff. So it's just as with anywhere in the United States, just make sure you're really looking into what they're doing behind the scenes before you spend your money there.
I think and it's good advice, even transferable beyond. Look, if you're listening to this from another country, like a lot of UK listeners will be, or like, oh, I have this massive plant on my desk and I've just smacked it, and it's an aloe vera and it's covered in very sharp thorns. So it's
Uh-oh.
ow, ow. So back to the advice though. If you are, yeah, going anywhere in the world, like look up the accreditation of wherever you're going, because here in the UK, as I said, we've got BIASA, EASA for Europe. So if you're going to a zoo in Europe, like there are always these things that have these rules. So I think it's such a good transferable piece of advice to be like, look out for this stuff, especially in a
Mhm.
world of like zoos are a very contentious topic for some people, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's one of those ones where you've got to be like, well, I totally agree that in a perfect world, they would not need to exist on any level. But we do not live in a perfect world, so we have to follow the strictest, most stringent, good practice guidelines to
Mhm.
ensure like the zoos follow conservation and animal welfare and all that sort of stuff. And when they do, they can be fantastic tools for conservation. And so, yeah, I like
Mhm.
that is fantastic advice to be like, yeah, like make sure and like just do a little bit of research. Don't jump right in just because you see something cool, because I've definitely gone to places without doing research before, and like if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably animal inclined, and as soon as you
Right.
walk in the door you will often go like, oh, I've made a mistake here, because you'll
Mhm.
see something instantly. Whereas when
Vibes
you go to
off.
places, yeah, where you're like okay, once you've got the accreditation, you usually get round without being like, okay, that was like there might be a couple things you change, but that might be just
Mhm.
personal preference or whatever. So yes, I think fantastic advice.
Act
Um,
like if you're ever like going to a wildlife facility of any kind, act like it's a guy that your friend is thinking about dating. And like take that level
mhm.
of social media stalking and like put on your Google FBI hat and
Mhm.
investigate them as though they are somebody your friend is considering dating.
Mhm. And yeah, I love that. I love that because I am the friend who like you'd think it would be like people would be like, look out for. I'm really nervous to meet this person's parents, or I'm really nervous to meet this person's like. My friends will be like, my boyfriend, my girlfriend was really nervous to meet you because they know, like, I've never met them before, but they know my reputation of being the one who's like, oh, I'll suss you out. I know exactly what's going
Oh,
on
I've
there,
got
sir.
their mom's public records up on my laptop. Like,
Like, oh, so you spent a suspicious amount of money in cash on this day in January 2022? Like, what was that about? Like,
oh yeah, I've got like a
yeah,
binder already. I'm all set. They have a case file with me.
we like, yeah, this is why, like, just off, like, we're on a Zoom-esque call where we can see each other. Just off show on this desk, there's piles high everyone's partner's information just to be safe. I'm
There's
fully
a
stocked and
board
ready
with
to go.
like red string linking people to each other and
Yeah,
like
on one side it's my friends' partners, and on the other side it's for zoos, where I'm like, I'm watching you. I can see what you're
got
doing.
like receipts like pinned to the board and everything's like strung together with big circles drawn around them. And you should take
It's
that energy to researching zoos.
exactly. And I guess like that's fun. Like I feel like a fantastic, like we have gone on this like I said when we started we're gonna shoot for an hour. We've gone
Not
1 hour
happening.
37 minutes,
You
and I
knew
think the
that wasn't
fans. No,
happening.
I knew it wasn't gonna. For most of this interview, I've just been sat here nodding. I have made no effort to stop you or slow you down or go, we need to
You're
move
an
on, because I'm like,
enabler.
yeah, I'm like, yeah, sure, yeah, this is interesting. Like, this is the like, I'm like loving it, and I think it's been fantastic. But I think I need to move on to the final questions.
Absolutely.
There's always two. There is
Mhm.
the first one is for advice, and the second one is for self promo. So both very important ones.
Yes.
So first question I have to ask is that if anyone has listened to this episode, or what might become two if we get to, depend on how long the advice goes, if this gets to 2 episodes, if anyone's listened to these, what like would your advice for someone who wants to get involved in conservation, or like has picked up on something, like what would your advice be to the listener?
Mine would be start small. Um
Okay.
I would say start local. So
Mhm.
it can be as simple as just going outside with your phone and taking pictures of like
Mhm.
the animals and the plants and the cool stuff you see. Run them through iNaturalist and get like a even a vague ID, and then use that as a springboard to like learn more about the types of life that live
Mhm.
around you, and that'll kind of give you an entry point for like you can look around and see what kind of threats are like
Mhm.
problems in your local area. So I think if you can connect with environmental issues at like a personal local level, then I
Mhm.
think that'll really motivate you to want to like improve your immediate area, right? Like you want
Mhm.
your the space around you to be improved and to let your local like flora and fauna like thrive. So, like start with your neighborhood. And
Mhm.
then, if that goes well and you develop some momentum, then zoom out, look at your town or your city, and then, you can look bigger and bigger from there. But especially since there are so many problems, there's
Mhm.
so many problems that are so pressing and so urgent all over the world.
Mhm.
It's overwhelming. You're going to get choice paralysis, right? If you try to
Yeah.
look at everything and learn about all of the problems, there's too many. You cannot solve them
Mhm.
all. So start small. Like look at something that's a problem in your area. Like maybe a pond has been filled in and there's not enough water around for the animals now. Or maybe like
Mhm.
some like forests have been like uh bulldozed and then now there's not enough shelter for the animals. Like think about
Mhm.
like what can you do in your immediate area that's going to solve like a very local problem, and then just
Mhm.
start small and like start there. Because if you can connect with that problem at a very personal level, I think that's going to get you a lot farther than like trying to zoom too far out and trying to
Mhm.
go too big too fast, because then you're going to
Yeah.
get burnt out and you're going to get discouraged. And but if you just start little.
Yeah, yeah, and like I feel like this has been the perfect example of like you've talked about your local things. I've dropped some of my local things in, and like I feel like it's the perfect like summary of this conversation. Like, because yeah, I mean, and the Florida problems are so small, you'll be able to fix them all by yourself.
It's just me, actually.
Yeah,
I was
it's
just
just
gonna
you.
go knock them out this afternoon. Actually, everything should be fine by Monday.
Yeah, just plant a couple seeds. The mangroves will be back in a few days, and it'll be
It'll be
fine.
great. That's all it
But like,
takes.
yeah,
I'll
or
let the
just
state
like,
know.
just become your local snake lady. Like, I feel like this is what you've got to do. Become whatever your equivalent of the local like neighborhood snake representative is for
Mhm.
you. Whether it be birds like we've got here, or if it's lizards or whatever it is, be your local like wildlife
Yes.
champion.
Yes,
Like,
use animal charisma to like
hmm
get you into conservation. Like think about like, okay, what kind of animals do I think are really cool? Do I love
hmm
reptiles? Do I love birds? Do I love mammals? Like think about what animal you think is cool. Don't worry about whether it's like cool. Just worry about what you think is like the most interesting thing. And then like look around and see what lives near you and see what you can get like
hmm
interested in and excited about, so that will help you like stay motivated to actually take action. So I would say to start small, like
yeah.
look around in your local area. Try not to get burnt out. Try not to develop empathy burnout, like just,
hmm
I know that's a big problem. Disconnect from it sometimes if you have to, if it gets to be too much, and take a break and come back when you feel refreshed. So I think that's my biggest advice, is to just start small.
That is fantastic advice. And I think I could not have asked for better advice, and it's perfect for this episode. I just love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it.
I'm
Um
glad.
I like how I started this podcast by saying the word but or whatever it was about 100 times, and now I'm like love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. It's
That's a
the
much better
caffeine because
replacement.
yeah, it's I started this by drinking like I had a glass of coffee before this, and I've been
Mhm.
like a mug of coffee before this, and I've been drinking Pepsi throughout, so I am caffeinated now.
Jazz.
Yeah, so there'll be many repeatings. But finally, before I let you go and sign off, we've got one more question, which is self promo. What if
Mm.
like where can people go to learn more about you and what you do, and kind of yeah keep up to date with just the zoo of us as we mentioned at the start of the show.
Absolutely. So the podcast Just as of Us is by far the most interesting thing about me. Um, so you can keep up with us, on any podcatcher. So whatever you're listening to this podcast
Mhm.
on, you can go find us. Just search the title and you'll get there, I promise. We're also on basically every like major social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram. I'm the most active on Twitter.
Mhm.
So you can come check us out on there. We have a Discord server too. It's actually really fun. Like people in there are super chill and nice, and I love them. So like, I mean,
Mhm.
they're chill and nice on every platform we're on. So like definitely come hang out with us on social media. I personally am also on like Twitter and stuff, but I'm not super interesting. My personal handle is at Elksneedle, ELKSNEEDLE. If you want to follow me on there, it's a little raunchier than my family friendly podcast. But you know, I also have recently started streaming on Twitch. I've started streaming video games on Twitch. I play like wildlife themed games. Like I play games where you either play as animals or explore animals and stuff. And we try to, you know, bring up any sort of facts about animals. Like I try to inject some science education into it as we go along. So I'm on there too. If you enjoy watching video game live streams, I'm on there too. And that's all there is about me, really. I wish I had other projects to promote, but I really don't because it's all I do. I put all my eggs in one basket.
Well, this is like what I'm literally about to say is like, well, while you're in the like, I will put the links to all of that in the description, and while you're down there, all of my stuff is down there too because all I do is this. So, so yes, like I'll put the description in the for. My brain is now non-functioning.
I've given it to you.
An injection of Florida directly into my bloodstream is going
you don't
to
want
my
that.
head.
You don't want that. That's not good. I didn't talk about our other thing that we have a reputation for, which is a lot of drugs.
Okay, maybe that was the wrong reference to use. That could be in part 2 of the Florida. We'll come back in a few months' time and we'll loop back to Florida. No, what I was going to say is all of your links for all that will be in the description for this episode. Down there will also be links to all of our social media. We're at Pangolin Podcast on pretty much everything. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We recently joined TikTok. I don't really understand it because I feel like I've never felt more old in my life. Like being like, I like this video, but we're on there now too. And
I'm a TikTok goblin, so if you ever have something on TikTok that you're like, I don't understand what this is, send it to me. I'll decode it for you.
Oh, I will. They will all be coming your way now because I don't understand. And yes, you can subscribe to the show on whatever podcast streaming service you're listening to us on now. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are, make sure and hit subscribe. And yes, that brings us to the end. We have clocked it in at an hour 45, so this will definitely be a 2-part episode, but it will be a grand, fantastic 2-part episode.
Thank you for letting me, thank you for giving me the space to absolutely ramble for an hour and 45 minutes. But I think you knew what you were signing up for.
Oh, I fully was. And do you know what? The fans, after if any of your fans who have come over from just the two of us are listening, the kind and wonderful and lovely reaction you all gave me when I was on just the zoo of us talking about pangolins. Thank you so much for now joining us here. And this is for you. That you all demanded more content, so now you've got it. Maybe
service.
You'll regret that now. Maybe you'll regret that now. But like, it's done. It's you've sat through an hour 45. I'm sure you've loved it. And thank you to all of my regular listeners as well for tuning in for what was a slightly different episode, a bit more freeform. But I think a lot of fun. So let me know if you'd like them to be a bit more freeform in the future. And yes, of course, I have to say a massive thank you finally to you, Ellen, for joining me and telling me about things that I did not know about and now makes me really want to go to Florida and not go to any of the major theme parks, which people will look at me strangely for doing. But yes, I will now have to do. So thank you so much.
This has been a complete delight, as it always is, to talk to you, Jack. So thank you so much for the space and the time.
Yes, thank you. Well, I never know what to say when people thank me because I've just enjoyed it. It's been a personal gain for me. So you are very welcome. Baby. Yes.
This is a symbiotic relationship.
It is. I am the algae that is clinging to your turtle. This is and on that note, we need to go before we lose our minds anymore. So on that note, thank you all so much for listening again. And until next time, goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.